Well, hello everyone. And today we're having an exciting conversation with Emily London. She's an experienced tantrika, the adventurer, the lover, and she has lots of stories. And we've been working together for a long time. And now she's in my apprenticeship program, Tantra apprenticeship program. And we're going to dive deep into our conversation about Tantra and Ascension of intimacy and creating basically a new paradigm of relating and intimacy and leadership as well, and living and building a community. So welcome, London. I'm excited
Mm,
to talk to you.
Thank you for having me, Lana. My heart is racing. Like just hearing that, vision that you always lead with makes my heart feel really alive and excited to share space with you. And I'm so excited for this conversation. So thank you for
Mm,
having me.
yes. Let's dive in. So let's start with your story. I know you're writing a book and you've been traveling around the world, like in Costa Rica, and lived in Costa Rica for a while. And we started to work together a while ago. I think it was 2020, and you were still in Utah. You were going through big transition, life changes at the time, and then you took the journey. You started your journey and you left to Costa Rica and lived there. So let's start with your journey. What brought you to this tantric path, and what was your experience back then?
Okay, so it's a long story, so I always think, where do I start? I'll start right in the middle where you came into my story. So I had just gotten divorced and I had been married for 15 years. I was Mormon when I was a kid and was married in the Mormon temple to a really good dude. But he and I never clicked sexually. And at the point of my divorce, becoming more literate in my own sexuality became something that I was really drawn to, super gravitating. Like all of my energy and life force was directing me that way. It was like 15 years of frustration and stagnation had caught up to me finally and was propelling me forward. And I had done a lot of reading about female sexuality in particular. And that led me to, Tantra came up quite a bit. And then I was a portrait photographer for women at the time, and I was hosting an event in my studio for women. And you arrived in this, at this glamorous sort of event in my studio, for wine, women in business, I think was what it was called.
Mhm.
And you mentioned that you were a tantra coach, and I remember like my mouth, like literally jaw dropped open. It was just like, I need to talk to you. And was just so ready. When you and I had our first conversation about Tantra, I remember having this energy of like, okay, so how do I start? And that even that first moment of choosing to work with you, hire you as a coach, as I checked in with my own inner knowing and my intuition to feel into whether that was the right choice, I remember just really landing into this really deep gratitude and love, and just this giant well of deep feeling in my being for you and for our work that we were going to be doing. And it was like this very easy, like, okay, I'm ready. This is a big investment, but it feels so true. It feels so correct. And that was our beginning. So that was back, yeah, 2020, right? As the rest of the world was shutting down, I was like coming online.
Right, it was a big year for many of us somehow, like how the world, it was kind of a reset button, and suddenly we had all this space, everything was more quiet. It felt like all this noise in the society, right? And then we started to work together, and I had immediately had this deep connection with you because you were like, at the time, you were like riding horses, and you were like wearing this horse riding outfit sometimes, like when we like, one of our first conversations, like, wow, she is so already embodied. She's already embodied. Like maybe you were not connected to like specifically like sexuality and linking everything together. I was like, wow. And like the depth of our conversation and the juiciness and your capacity to be vulnerable and share all the details and your hunger to go into those, places where usually people don't go and they don't talk to strangers about these things. I was like, wow, I love this woman. I was like so excited to work with you. That was such a beautiful beginning, the start of our relationship. And then we've been working for a year, and then you decided to go for another year of coaching, and you moved to Costa Rica. So what inspired you to move to Costa Rica? So started to do all the tantric work, and it was quite deep and intense for you. So I remember at some point you was like, okay, I'm I'm gonna completely change my life besides going through divorce, besides, making so many changes. You also like completely let go of all the past and like open a new page in your life.
Yeah. So in my childhood, I had been raised in Asia, in the Philippines. Before my parents got divorced, I was like 3 when we moved there, and I was 7 when they got divorced. And after my parents divorced, my mom moved to Orem, Utah, and we were like Mormon, so it kind of made sense. She was going to finish her studies at BYU, the Mormon University. And my dad was promoted and he got a job in Taipei. So I, in my childhood, was living between Utah and Taipei, which is, very tropical climate. And I really struggled with the cold of Utah my whole life. And I married a man who was from Utah. So we stayed in Utah for the 15 years we were married and we raised our kids here. And so, our kids were, like 11 and 14 or so. And I think, like you had said, I had just started riding, I had been riding horses. I had started when I was just about 30, getting into riding horses. That was another like childhood obsession that I had decided to give myself permission to pursue. And so I was riding horses and I was really obsessed with it in the sense that I was, I at the end of my marriage, like it was kind of the thing that I clung to. It was like COVID was going on and I could still ride horses. So I was going every day, more or less. I had like 3 lessons a week where I had this woman who was this fantastic teacher who I kind of talk about her like she's my horse riding dominatrix. Like she was like overseeing my posture and my body, and my core and like engage your core and like into your back. She's very like very precise in the body mechanics.
Mm.
And so it was one of the first ways that I was like able to come into my body as a felt experience without a mirror, without, it's not like Pilates class where you can just mimic the teacher by making the shapes in the mirror that they make. And you're sort of like a puppeteer controlling this body that's like a marionette that you're the boss of with your mind. That's how I experienced my body before. Even though I was like a very athletic person, like if I'm doing all of my workouts in a mirror, then I don't actually have to ever learn how to embody from inside of myself to feel it. And so with riding horses, it was like I actually had to learn how to be inside my body and be in connection with another body and be in, precise moment by moment communication with this other, giant being who's like really taking you somewhere. So like I was really into this like game of learning to surrender. Like with horse riding, that was a big part of what I was accessing and learning how to regulate my nervous system. So one of the first things we had to train was how to breathe and how to make myself heavy and grounded in my body so that I could tolerate the intensity of the terror of like the horse going too fast. So it was like, okay, it was a fantastic regulating practice which I wasn't aware of how valuable that would be at the time. It was just a compulsion I was drawn to. And so I was in that season of following what I was drawn to. So I was drawn to riding horses. I was drawn to Tantra and working with you. And I was kind of just one day walking my dog and looked up at my beautiful home that I had my portrait studio in. And I just had this knowing that I was going to sell this house and that I was going to move to Costa Rica and that I was like it was just present tense knowing. I walked in and I like texted my realtor, who's my mom. Said, Mom, I need to list the house. Like it's time. And I feel like when you asked why, it's like in hindsight, I can say I had a lot of inner child work to do. I had a lot of healing to do, related to, being kind of pulled out of this sort of tropical paradise before I was ready as a little girl, and giving myself this permission and season of time to return to paradise and just offer myself a really beautiful sanctuary where I could dance and heal and write and reconnect with that childhood part of me that was really, kind of needed to mourn that was taken away, and that my, parents kind of had been promising that families could be together forever every night and, before bed. And then like it was very traumatic to be kind of taken from that really heavenly environment in the sense of like where we were growing up. My parents' marriage was not a very heavenly environment, so it was great that they got divorced because of that. And, to then be going through my own divorce process and mourning and suffering the heartbreak of all of that, it was like my soul was ready to go back in time to this place, or at least a place that was, enough like it, safe, had a lot in common. Like it was closer to my kids, so I didn't have to do like a 26-hour journey to get to Asia the same way I did in my childhood. So Costa Rica was more convenient, and also it just was what was put in front of me. Like the universe just sort of like gave me some serendipitous, clues that led me to Costa Rica specifically. And so I just went along with where I was led. I wasn't attached with the where, I was more attached to the feeling. And I just knew I was going to be taken somewhere green and tropical and safe and cozy in a cocoon. And I remember telling you about the knowings that I was having this one particular morning that I was out in nature with my dog, and that I was, had a lot of doubts and not knowing, like the hows, and really remember you being integral to the permissioning and the like, it's okay, yes, go on your hero's journey, it's time. Like, let's start your adventure.
Mm.
Oh yeah, you
Yes,
were there every
definitely
step of the way.
remember. I remember you was like, I want to write a book about my life, but I think I need more chapters. Like I haven't lived everything I want to live, I write about. And I was like, oh my God, yes, that's the next chapter for sure. Yes,
Mm.
I remember that time. There was like a new beginning and like everything is opening up. There was like huge energetic opening, which reminds me about my own, heroine's journey when I moved to California, like in 2013. And it was like, just like this intense knowing, intense like openings, like yes, it's a full body yes, this you absolutely know nobody can stop you. I was like, wow, this is so familiar to me, that feeling. But tell us a little bit more about the adventure in Costa Rica, because it was a few years. There were so many experiences that you embraced, and you gave yourself permission to explore. And I know you created this program that I'm just absolutely in love with. It. Even like the name of it, just so juicy and so like enticing. It's especially for people who never allowed themselves an adventure of life. Adventurous lovership. And it just for me, when I think like when you said that, it was like, oh my God, this is total embodiment of your journey in Costa Rica, adventurous lovership. So tell us a little bit more about the journey itself, what you've learned. You started to weave Tantra with other modalities like authentic relating, and dance was a huge one. And you did some beautiful recording. You met some amazing people. You had lovers. I was like, tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, well, where to begin with that too? It was definitely chapters, and you were there like every week we had a conversation, and you were like definitely a soul guide along my way for sure. So it's kind of fun to tell you the story again when you were there. But yeah, I guess what Costa Rica ended up becoming for me was, yeah, like a lot of romance, a lot of exploration of my own um, magnetic power, like kind of discovering, like having spent a lot of my adult life in Utah, where, my looks are kind of a dime a dozen, very typical blonde, you know, um, Midwesternish kind of look in Utah that I'm very like other women around me. So I'm not I'm not necessarily used to thinking of myself as a particularly beautiful woman. And I suppose Costa Rica was a really beautiful opportunity for me to be reflected my own beauty. And my beauty kind of in a way that is not necessarily only about how I look, but how I am open and how I am kind of anticipating that life will be, you know, quite warm and receptive to me. In general, I feel like people are really kind to me. And so I move through the world expecting warmth, but like being warm. And, so my way of being kind of brings a lot of opportunities for me to connect with lots of people. And because I was also in a state of like, I'm writing my book and I'm really trying to familiarize like my being with what this story is, as I'm trying to write it, I'm living it as well. And I was really playing with trying to follow my flow. Like this was a game that you had invited where it was rather than living from schedules and to-do lists, which I had been training myself to do with my previous business and my past life as a photographer. It was like live moment by moment in truth. Follow your yes in like the sensation of like today I feel like eating this so I was really just living my life as this experiment of what if I just stay connected with how I feel and like where I go today based on how I feel. And like so then because I was playing this game, every person that I met to me was sort of like an extension of the game in the sense that the universe has aligned me with this being who's supposed to be in front of me right now. Like all of the forces have conspired to bring us together. So I'm going to take my time and like savor this person as if I'm reading a book about a person. It's like, how long does it take to read a memoir? Like 8 hours? I mean, why not? Why not just have an 8 hour conversation with a stranger at the beach? So I did all the time. And it was like this beautiful opportunity for me to hear all the versions of my story as they relate to different people. Like people draw out different parts of you, and I don't need to hear my whole story from start to finish every time I talk to somebody. So I'll only share what comes out, what's alive with this person. And so each person is drawing out a different aspect of me. So it's like a sacred exchange. I come to know myself with more depth when I allow myself to be revealed.
Mm.
And when I do, the walls of separation come down, and like I don't feel like I meet strangers.
Mm.
Like,
Yes, that's a good point. Energetically, sometimes we meet somebody and like they're not strangers. They're like soulmates. Like we feel like we belong to the same planet, or like we're made of the same material and it's different than others. And that's the beauty of like tantric communication. I feel I use tantric, but whatever, energetic communication. That we're just like, wow, this person is my person. You just like know very quickly, just energetically.
well,
Mm,
and I started learning, how to find ways that anybody could be a person that is my person. It's like what ways does this person excite me? And you know what? If I was not enticed or excited to continue a conversation, I was not trying to force conversations to last any longer than their, perfect time. The conversation feels complete. I am, it's like it could be just a beautiful, wave and smile. And that's all that an exchange is meant to be. So it was very fun to follow just the aliveness of whatever is flowing.
mm,
And so, to be connected with so many beings, I feel like I stopped watching movies and I stopped reading books, which I was always like an avid reader when I was young. And I realized in the journey that I was doing, it was because people replaced that for me, that I was actually absorbing so many stories in the form of just connecting in real life, face to face. And it really actually made me experience a version of the world that is so different than what is presented or what we're sort of swimming in social media land and like online, where there's so much anger and poison and rage and side taking.
Mhm.
I felt like what I was actually living was so much connection and warmth and love and capacity for like creating, infinite potentials. So it was just like, wow, I really see how keeping us stuck in this little alternate reality that makes us fear is so poisonous to what is available. Like what if I was like really to go with what I see online and believe that as reality and not go be an experimental adventurer myself and just going and throwing myself into reality and seeing how it responds to me. I wouldn't have a clue that this is how reality could be. I would just assume that it's all the fighting and the anger and the poison.
Mm. Yeah, wow. That is so interesting to hear because some people never allow themselves with like open adventure, open seas adventure. They just like oh, everything's so cautious, everything's so planned. It's like a vacation. It's like everything is, set up already. And I just to dive into the adventure of life and just move and see what happens. That's definitely a different approach to life. There is this feminine flow, and I believe everyone can experience this if they give themselves permission to be in that more feminine flow as a phase of their growth and exploration. And I wanted to ask about the exploration piece because many women, specifically, like if we talk about women, they don't really allow themselves to explore in terms of like, you know, who they are in the world and how they relate to the world and also in the relationship with men because like usually like in more modern kind of setting when people grow up they leave parents house and they go maybe to college or do some like exploration. Some people travel also, and this is the time when they self-explore and they learn how they relate to like men, how women and men relate, what they like, what they don't like. They experiment a bit. They don't just get married. But I know in Utah it's very traditional society and like based on religion, and like women usually don't explore, so you got married really young, like at the age of 17 something like that. So there was no exploration phase. So when we worked together I remember it's like, well, I think you need to catch up with some exploration and meet different characters and meet different men as well to just know who you are, what you like and how you relate and what works for you, right? This is just so such an important part of like individuation process when we grow up, and it's part of our development. And so I remember we were talking about that. So and then you just had all this experience in Costa Rica. So tell us a little bit about this permission to explore in terms of also romantic relationship, meeting different people, not necessarily just like get married again right away or find somebody and like start with very serious intentions right away, because I know many women also, especially in Utah, need to have that experience just as part of their own journey of self-exploration. So tell us a little bit about that, because it can be very permissioning for people who are watching this interview.
Sure. So, um, hmm. So yeah, like you said, I met my husband when I was 17. We got married when I was 18. But yeah, no, I didn't get much opportunity to do lots of exploration. I was a pretty exploratory youth, as a teenager. So at least I'd had a few, boyfriends and things. But I mean, the high school relationships. And then my husband was 7 years older than me. So I met him when he was 24 and I was 17. He was not pursuing me. It wasn't like some situation. I actually was very pursuing him. He was very, very much fit the Clark Kent return missionary energy that was like represented a good man to me. He was very safe. And so I pursued this safe being, and he was very safe. He was very responsible. He was a great father. And so I did get what I wanted and what I was looking for a long time. And I think part of that was his gift that I got to experience safety in my being for a really long time. Um, Financial safety was something that I got to have because he was so financially responsible and we were making money well. And so he was saving. So that's a big part of why I was able to go on all of these adventures was because he had kind of kept aside quite a bit of the money we'd been making. So I mean, like I had this opportunity because I'd, done kind of a lot of this other masculine work in this version of life that I had done before. And so it's like I actually have a lot of appreciation and see a lot of value in both versions of myself, like this strategic sort of engineer. My ex-husband was an engineer, so he was like very influential to my mind, the way that my strategy was in life, very safe. And then to go to this sort of wild, like chaotic, like there is no strategy. I'm going to spend all the money and I'm going to, to hell with whatever the consequences of how things fall. Like I'm willing to trust that life is going to have me and I'm going to throw myself into life aggressively and like I learned some good lessons and would do things with a little bit of like half and half, mix and match some of the skills of both now that I have access to both. But it was like I had 15 years of cultivating this version of myself, this safe, like structured version. And this like season with you and all of these explorations was like the romantic version of myself and the sexual version of myself and the wild version of myself who was not in a strategy. There was no like, I'm choosing a man because of XYZ personality traits or checklist things. Like, no, I'm gonna not care about how old he is, what his job is, how much money he makes. Like, I will try, like, by felt sense alone to allow my body to lead me to the people, to the lessons, to the explorations that are in alignment for. And it was nice actually to be coming into that season of exploration in my 30s and in some sense had some wisdom and some slowness. I wasn't necessarily trying to be sexual, with one night stands on a regular, like I was very I was mindful. I'm aware that the energy that is be exchanged between lovers is an intense energy and is, you know, I was not necessarily looking just for the physical expression of sexual connection. I was really more attracted to the energetic intensity of, emotional intimacy and alignment. And so, I was like very open to finding it. And so I was able to find, several different manifestations of it because it was like I wasn't ever closing myself off. Like, oh, I found one, so now I'm closed.
Mm.
It was kind of like, hey, I'm staying open. I was very if I was in connection with one person, it wasn't like I was trying to be in connection with multiple at once.
Mhm.
That was
Yeah, one
distracting.
person at a time.
Yeah. One at a time, yeah,
With
no,
always present, right? So it's about being very present when you like meet
totally.
somebody, you spend this deep quality time, but you're not necessarily looking to settle down. Like sometimes people think of
Right.
so be right away, like, oh no, but so you were still like allowing yourselves to be, like an open chapters, like I'm still exploring, right? And see what
Well,
happens.
yeah, I started realizing that if I wasn't casting somebody into a role,
Mm.
like boyfriend, for example, then he could be who he is. And I can just observe and be interested and curious and open-minded about who he is because I'm not necessarily expecting that he should be anything to me. Should he be somebody who provides something for me, a resource, something, a feeling?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. He's just himself. He's just a being that I'm observing and appreciating.
Mhm.
And so when I was coming into relationship with this paradigm of like, I'm not putting somebody into a role. I'm just observing who they are and allowing the energy to create what is real from our relationship. And each relationship that I had was totally different. I didn't have a story or a place I was a destination that I was trying to go with everybody. It was like every kind of season of my life, I had a different need. I had a different lesson or a different longing that I was trying to connect to, you know, and one of the best gifts is, you know, in the way that I was relating is that I really was given lots of mirrors and opportunities to see myself anew with amongst like lots of different energies and lots of different types of beings, different people were able to show me different sides of myself that maybe had been blind to.
Mm.
And
Golden, like what you said just now, because we have this medicine for each other, and people can bring completely different medicine and unlock certain qualities, certain energies within ourselves that have been hidden. And otherwise they wouldn't. It's like alchemy, like you just bring these two medicine together, what's going to happen? Right? And that's what exploration, like we call it like in Tantra, exploration partnerships, like where it's not headed to like serious relationship or like marriage or long, like lifelong partnership. Sometimes it can happen, but we're not really like, that is not the main focus, right? It's that unlocking that medicine, knowing yourself on a deeper level. So just want to people to understand the approach, because it's not like messing around. It's not like having like whatever open relationship the way people do in terms of polyamory. It's like, no, it's the phase when we explore ourselves, and the main focus is to discover these new sides, new energies within yourself, and like be fascinating with what comes through. It's like it's expansion of identity, I would say.
Mhm. Well, and one thing that was really important was that I had developed with like with you and with training, like the ability to say no, like as in I'm willing to dance with you to this level, you know, and that's as far as I'm available to connect with you. The ability to say that means I can dance with anyone, more or less, because I'm really comfortable to say like truthfully, here's my line. You know,
Mhm.
here's my boundary of like, oh, some people are going to become your lover and some people will not. It's not meant to be. And
Mhm.
I'm not actually trying to have tons and tons of lovers specifically. I love to dance. I want to have lots of dance partners. I want to be able to connect with a lot of people. So I had to really develop that skill as well. How
Mhm.
to be in connection and how to come into dance with somebody who really is lighting you up on the dance floor, but isn't somebody you want to take to the bedroom.
Mhm.
And so, like, that skill was one of the first most important foundational skills that once I had that developed, then suddenly the world opens up and I can be friends with an infinite number of people without the story that I'm required to date or be romantic with anybody.
Mhm.
If I don't feel attracted romantically, I'm going to be really honest and direct really quickly
Mhm.
so that we don't have confusion. I want there to be total clarity. I want it to feel totally true. I want the truth of the energy to be so like known. I'm naming what's real for on my side as early as I can.
Mhm.
I'm modeling for people like that I will be totally truthful.
Yeah.
That includes like when I'm really vibing with somebody. Like I tend to be the more vulnerable, like open one.
Hmm. It's so magical when you can be so vulnerable and open and like truthful, right? It's like what's real between us? Like, wow, we have this chemistry. It's like, what is this energy? It's like you can actually acknowledge this together with another person and not to feel awkward or like have some kind of expectations. So like you know how people do that or project something. That's such a beautiful skill, and I feel it is foundation for knowing yourself and practicing your boundaries, understanding what you love and who you are, right? And also expanding, like allowing yourself to be not just one personality type or person, right? Like you can be all this spectrum of energies that you can pull in and out whenever it feels right, right?
Mm. You know, I feel like learning to dance is really what gave me access to like that in my body, that
Mm.
ability to tap into, because I feel like in conversations I could do it. I was in conversational relating able to access that from childhood. But in terms of like with my lovers or with people in a body to body way, dance is really the place where I was able to integrate that skill of like learning how to play with the energy of a different being and magnify it in its direction of whatever it is, right? So it's like when you dance with somebody and you come into a collision of energies, you know, whose dance do you adopt? Who's got the stronger field? Who's got the dance that's more, you know, like appealing to the other, right? It's sort of all of the different ways that the games could shake down are totally different with each collision.
Mm.
And whether that's with dance or with a conversation, it's happening under the surface.
Mm.
It's just in dance, we magnify it and we see it represented visually in the space of like, this is actually the field that's the physical representation of the field between us.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, so powerful how much interaction, how much communication is going on besides, talking, because we rely on talking so much. And with the modern technology, even more so, right? Because we spend so much time on the computer and Zoom sessions, and we can do some experiential work, but it was like so much is available out there through energetic interaction, through the body, through the spirit, through like playing with this energy and weaving them together, right? So this is what is exciting about like embodiment and tantra and dance and all the embodied practices, that are somatic practices that many people are drawn to, and they want to explore more, and they want to like free themselves to be that way, right?
Mm.
So your story is very inspiring, and like it's a permission for women to discover their own phase. Like sometimes women go through divorce, and maybe it's not a good idea to find another partner and like settle right away, because if they miss this exploration for phase, like some women are hungry, it's like I want to explore myself and have an adventure. you know?
Well, and you know, it was also, I felt a really beautiful way for me to retrain how I love. You know, instead of seeing people in the lens of how can they support, serve, you know, me in some sense,
Mm.
my perspective shifted into one of just appreciation for who they are, separate from how they can be for me,
Mm.
which I think, you know, now in my relationship dynamic that I'm in, it's a big part of why I am as lovable a partner as I am, in the sense that I can show up for him without attachment for him to be in a certain way. Like I'm very much like of the belief that my role as his partner is just to cherish who he is.
Mm.
And that if I'm not able to cherish him, then that's where my work is. In either, you know, naming what's evolving if it's growing apart, or to keep myself so that I'm evolving the relationship so it maintains the good feelings. And so that's my focus, my emphasis. So it's like instead of trying to it's like my orientation around other people kind of changed from one that I would say is maybe a more masculine or utilitarian view of others, where it's like, how can I use this other tool in my, you know, my home? Like, oh, I have my household of people who can, like, how can I direct, you know, that was like the way that my brain used to work. And it was like I had to actually unwire or rewire my way of just perceiving people, reality, love, you know, like from like a really core level. So it's like when I talk about, you know, it's like, yeah, I had a hunger for sexual exploration, yes. But what my soul was actually bringing me was something so much more deep and nourishing than mere sex or mere physical connection of sex. It was
Mm.
like all of the accesses to being able to love more, being able to love myself more deeply, because I would see aspects of myself reflected in these other people who I was learning to love with more purity.
Mm.
You know, it's like I love you without needing you to change anything.
Mhm.
And so by being able to love you that way, it's like, oh, that models for me how to love myself that way. I love you without needing to change anything. I love myself and my wholeness. I can see aspects of self that I may love to evolve and grow. And, you know, it's like as a dancer, you always are, you know, shaping your relationship with your body, your flexibility, your strength. right? I'm always trying to get better, but can it be just lovely to be where I am in my body? Can I just enjoy the deliciousness of the flexibility I've cultivated so far?
Mm.
Can I let my body be in transition or a bud without being offended that it's not blooming?
Mm.
Right? So it's like that ability to love somebody in process is something that I gained through not putting someone in a role as my partner.
Mhm.
And now it's like I have a partner and I really appreciate the benefits of having a partner in a new way because I spent so much time without one that it really gave me the time to recognize what I love about having one.
Mhm. Wow. So this is the transition. I feel like we'll see. Maybe I'll make it like two parts because I have so much more to explore with you in this conversation. This is a perfect bridge to transition to the now moment, to the present time, and where are you at now, and being in partnership. I love how you bridged it, because this exploration phase, when you like not trying to see anybody in certain role and make them do things for you and serve you, and it's all about like, it's so selfish, right away to jump into that kind of like container. It's like he needs to be like this and this and this, he needs to make like, but when a person is on the other side, they don't want to be treated like that. It was like, okay, I didn't, and not everything is checked, like I'm not good enough, or like, oh, there's like, it's very like objectifying a person, not just sexually, but like, we say men objectify women like in terms of sexuality, but women also can objectify men in terms of their husband material, right? So I was like, can we just like stop doing these things? And I was like, and be in that pure energetic exchange and see what is real, and that can be a foundation. So I love how you bridged it, and now that you're using it as a platform, as a foundation for building real partnership, right? And we will talk about healing partnership and the sacred union and how we do it in Tantra, right? But it is a perfect bridge, because without this knowledge, without this experience, it would be really hard to navigate really beautiful, sovereign, and at the same time, like um, connected, deeply connected experiences and partnership, right? Union. So let's jump into the now moment, and I would like to hear your story about. I think it was like last summer, right? So we reconnected, and you came to one of my retreats, and I was about to launch my apprenticeship program. So it was just like, people started to, the group of us started to form really quickly. Like I was like, okay, I'm ready to launch it, and like people just showed up. And I remember I invited you to be part of the retreat, right? And because you worked with me for so long and you had your own program already in tantra and dance and authentic relating, and something beautiful, magical happens when you met Jared, and you both were like in a very different space than you're now, right? So tell me a little bit about that, because it's such a beautiful story where nothing was forced, there was no agenda, things just happened, and it just like, and what did it become, right?
Okay, so interesting. So when I met Jared, as you set it up already, it was a retreat that you had invited me to, and you were making the space that we would be kind of the demo couple. And so you had assigned Jared to me. I had never met him before. And there were conversations of like, hey, go ahead and connect so you guys can set your boundaries, and he and I just had a very brief, hi, I'm Jared, hi, I'm Emily London, and then the retreat begins. So the retreat's a retreat for couples, and Jared and I are not a couple. In fact, I was already partnered with somebody else. I had been dating for just about 4 months. So I was like not in a deep, super long committed relationship at this point, but I was in committed enough that like I was not available for any kind of romantic threads of connection with Jared. And he knew that I was in a partnership, and I felt that his energy was super clean, that he never had any kind of, trying to come at me with sexy energy. In fact, the way I would describe the energetic connection between Jared and me would be like very childlike. That we connected after a breath work uh, session first. So breath work has this way of tapping you into your, inner child energy, but, kind of this expanded state of consciousness that's, you know, it's a pretty vulnerable state, and it's interesting to reflect on going back into that connection with this new person, going to that level of vulnerability right out of the gate. And then our first connection, was we were demonstrating a yim yam position, which is more or less, sitting cross-legged, enveloping each other. So on his lap. And I was scooched back enough that there was some space between us. We weren't in full body contact, but we were just showing what the position looks like. And we just like I said, hello. And right away, I felt that his energy was very safety inducing, that I could be in my vulnerable state without having to go to a hardness that you do have to have with people who are invading boundaries. So if the energetic boundaries were being invaded, just on an energetic quality, like kind of pushing when I'm not soft, as an example,
Mhm.
that would make me get harder to get more clear on what my boundary is so
Mhm.
that I can get louder and more direct as needed.
Mhm.
And so if I'm in a really soft and squishy place and somebody's not picking up the subtle hardenings, then the hardenings have to get tougher,
Mhm.
right? And that's like a texture of negotiation and communication that's happening under the surface energetically, and especially when you're in this kind of proximity, right? And so, we're demonstrating also how to be doing some eye gazing, which is super vulnerable and connecting and intimate. And, but we were not generating any energy of sexual connection at all. The rules had already been set. I'm not available for it. I was in my romance with somebody else. So it was like a firm no. But all of the like I'm a dancer, so I'm comfortable on a dance floor with dance and body to body connection, which is, he's a massage therapist. So he's comfortable in a massage situation to have his hands on a naked person, who's moaning in pleasure. And
Mhm.
he's not in any, he's not inserting any sexual tones of energetic relating in that context either. So we both had this skill set developed already of body to body communication without putting our sexual energy into that space. And so we were able to build a really strong energetic field between the two of us that was really like, as a dancer, it's really fun to have somebody that you can feel safe to explore and to dance with and to try new things and to be in this energy where you can be vulnerable. And,
Mhm.
it's like first draft safety as an artist and a creative is it's a delicate thing. You don't want to just throw your pearls before swine.
Mhm.
Right? So you when you connect with somebody who is demonstrating the level of like trust and safety and the type of energetic and body to body like negotiations that were happening in our, kind of dance massage fusion that we were doing in that moment, was something that made us both really feel so safe and excited to play. And both of us were like, I I must have this other being in my life, even professionally as a dancer. I must continue dancing with this person. Like
Mhm.
I must have them because it's so rare for me to be able to go to this level of exploration in this quality of safety where the sexual part is totally off the table. It's being completely respected. And so the energy now is so childlike and pure
Mhm.
because there is like that trust created that, hey, we're not making that texture of energy in this space. So all of the texture that comes into the space is like just creative, playful, childlike, whimsical, openness, curiosity, wonder, excitement, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, the way you describe it is very similar to dance. Like people go and dance with, you know, other people, and sometimes you come and you dance with somebody, and sometimes it doesn't click at all, and sometimes it's like, wow, I love dancing with this person, right? It's like, and there is this just like communication, this energetic exchange that is it's been like part of human experience since the dawn of humanity. It's like people always danced. So when we do these tantric practices in a safe container, it's very similar. Nobody just opens up sexually with a stranger. It was like, especially if it's like, oh, you just met this person to do these practices. The boundaries are very clear, and energetic boundaries are also very, clear and kind of contain, like you're containing your energy and it's yours, and you feel what you want to share and exchange and you put out there. So it was beautiful to observe you doing these practices, because most people were like, many people were like first time doing tantra, and like there were couples, of course, and mostly there were couples as well. um and they thought that you've been together for 20 years or something, and you've done it like many many times. But for you guys it was more like discovery. It's like, wow, I can go that far and so deep with this person and I've just met. And it's because of this kind of energetic setting and the experiences and how you both wired. Like we sometimes say that Tantra is about remembrance. It's not about like learning something. For many people who feel tantric, they feel like, I remember this. This is who I am. Like I can just be like I can, people can perceive me like professional in this field, but like for me it's just like it's a relief of letting go of all this appropriateness and like this awkward behavior uh guidelines that we receive in the society, that we can actually flow and dance and connect, right? So that was the experience that everybody had watching you, right? And including myself. And for me too, when I look back, like when I started exploring Tantra, for me, it was like remembrance. And the person who was leading these things, like invited me actually to facilitate Tantra puja in Santa Cruz. It's like, I haven't practiced this. And I was like, no, you're fine. You can So for you guys, it was very similar situation. And it was actually like now I remember, like it was just so interesting how everything played out, because there was another couple who was supposed to come, then a woman couldn't make it, then I had to find a healing partner for this man who was coming to this retreat, and I introduced you to him first, but then he couldn't come, and it was like Jared was like basically like last moment person was like, would you like to come? He was like, we need like some people who can help me, with like role modeling, and you're like so much in your body, and and it just like these circumstances like played out in such miraculous way that you guys ended up doing these practices together, and now you are in the partnership. So let's look at how you then what it led you to decide to join the apprenticeship program, and Jared also joined, and what's the story behind it, and like your relationship. It was just like another chapter in your book.
uh, yeah. Well, so the relationship that I had was in with the gentleman that I was with when I met Jared was young enough that I basically went back to that and recognized I was going to need to negotiate terms for I am a dancer. I definitely need to be able to have dance partners. And this particular dynamic, that person wasn't dancing with me and wasn't necessarily available to. And so it was for me, the challenge was recognizing this is the wrong relationship for me if it's not available for me to be able to have a dance partner dynamic or a healing partner dynamic in terms of uh, working with you. We had kind of started talking about, okay, how do I stay in connection with Jared and how do I you know, design my relationship agreements with these two people so that everybody feels safe, so that I can have this dance partnership and exploration with, the different Tantra practices, continuing my progress as a tantrika with a healing partner who feels safe and who is willing to stay within all of the bounds of exploration that we define. So within this relationship, we can create the rules that are the most safety inducing for both people. And so we started there and trying to like negotiate this situation so that everything could feel safe and that I could, you know, really keep that relationship container safe and let it take its course for however long that was. And it ended up only being a couple more months that relationship continued. And mostly it was, the stress of this dynamic that this relationship was not really in full alignment for me and wasn't going to be a long-term relationship ever. But in that moment, I was really trying to explore with this person, and I had a lot of connection with him and wanted to see what was available and was still kind of holding on to it for a little bit past its date of
Mhm.
readiness to end. But uh, it was really nice to have the support of you and also Jared. We were doing sessions, the three of us, so that we were talking about the apprenticeship group and all of the how we were about to begin. And when you brought the idea of the apprenticeship group to me, I feel like I it's when you ask like how did I get into it, it's like I don't think I could imagine a reality where I wouldn't have signed up for it. It would I think it like always felt like the exact aligned, like yes, of course I would be in an apprenticeship program with you. And that I've been really wanting to develop and deepen my confidence in facilitating and practicing facilitating. And so I knew that you would be able to give me a lot of opportunities for that in the apprenticeship program. And so, plus all of the work that we've already done, the fact that that like my education is more or less exactly aligned with you and your school of Tantra, it feels really good, it feels really safe and really harmonious to like my path that I would always work with you. Always, always. So that's how I kind of got going, is just when you said, "Hey, I'm going to be doing one." It was like, "Yes, hell yeah." And I'll be, of course, one of your first students. Um, and so Jared and I, we were having our sessions, and that was where I was processing, a lot of the things that were not going very well and kind of unhealthy in that relationship and signs that it was time for it to end. And so having the support system to land into when that relationship completed ended up being really essential to my ability to walk away when it was the right time. And so having like the healing partnership was something that I valued so much and really appreciated in this moment of transition. And so actually when Jared and our relationship, sometime later, several days or a few weeks, started shifting towards the romantic, I actually was in a lot of resistance. I was like, I'm really not wanting to risk this really great healing partnership that I have with this person who is a really safe friend. And so to risk the friendship for a romance was actually like, so talk about the opposite of creating the story of my, knight in shining armor that I put him into. It was like he was not, I was not putting him in that character at all. It was more like, no, the friend was so good. Like I couldn't risk, you know, um, anything that would cause me to lose this really now really sacred relationship that had become like my safety. And um so it that was my biggest point of resistance when things started shifting towards the romantic. And I guess luckily you and Jared were both able to kind of talk me through it. And also luckily I have the trust in he and I to return to that type of relating of friendship and safety in the healing partnership dynamic if the romantic aspect of our dynamic were to ever run out or be complete.
Mhm.
And so just that trust of that we were able to communicate through the whole, all of the different relationship like closings and openings in all of the different processes that we navigated. So it actually created a lot of safety for us and trust because we didn't go to any romantic place together while I was in that other relationship. We kept the energy really clean. And so that made it so we both have a lot of trust for each other that we know we're not the kind of person who would gestate one relationship while while still completing another. So it was actually like and also the fact that sex was never the primary motivator for our relationship. And so the fact that that came later meant that we were able to establish a lot of connection safety and um yeah, like just a solid foundation, just this groundedness within each other where we feel so stable and stabilized by each other, separate from sex, which is like nice to be able to then have the both,
Mhm.
where you can get that stability through sex as well, but like the core foundational emotional intimacy that we were able to build was something so much deeper and richer and more like a core to be anchored into than anything that I had ever been able to design or create with another partner in the past. So the healing partnership dynamic has been really yummy to build with and play with for sure.
Yes, yeah, I would like to continue about healing partnership a little bit more because most people don't understand the concept and what it is. It's something that we practice in our school of Tantra. But I wanted to beforehand highlight what you said about how it was the friendship first and foundation, energetic foundation and communication and like establishing safety in your relationship, like this deep trust with each other first and agreements and boundaries and getting to know each other, right? And trusting that space and foundation first. And then sex was like a bonus and it came much later versus like when people out there, like in mainstream society, when they talk about tantra, they think it's sex. It's like, oh, tantra workshop is gonna be sex. I was like, no, it's the opposite of that. Like, sex is the last thing that comes through, and sometimes people stay in this healing partnership for a long time before they decide to explore sexuality, or some people never explore, right? There are different models, variations of healing partnership that are available based on what is true and real for people and what is the direction of their growth, right? So maybe you can share a little bit what does healing partnership mean for you, how you understand it, and what kind of agreements we have, like including like truth and growth, giving, receiving from the heart, that probably you utilized, both you and Jared, because I worked with both of you previously, so you already had that kind of education and practice with this. And Jared is like, from my perspective, is like genius with the agreement of giving and receiving from the heart. He really mastered that. So tell me about your experience with healing partnership and what it means to you.
Mm, okay. Well, it's kind of interesting since Jared and I got together and we joined the apprenticeship program, we now have healing partnerships with more people. So each healing partnership dynamic that I've explored has looked very different. So it's kind of, I would just say it's a specific container, and I would say I see each of these people as my friends, and that it is where we've made agreements that we're intentional about connecting a certain amount of a certain rhythm, whatever that is, and that the intention, yeah, I love that you just name it as like truth and growth is sort of the foundation. So, if you're building relationships where truth is one of the, the anchor points, that means vulnerability. That means when things are not going great, to bring that truth. That means when there's a conflict between the two of you and bringing that truth. Growth, really is the commitment to when somebody brings you their truth and it's in conflict to you, or it's in revealing something about yourself that is confronting to hear or see. A lot of our healing and growth comes from that, from being challenged, from being, reflected back to oneself in a way that, makes you uncomfortable. And so it's the kind of relationship where you can tolerate the discomfort that may come up in these things, and that you create enough safety that there is connection restored, from out afterwards or through that these kinds of challenging conversations. So it's learning, it's like a relationship where your commitments to yourself work and your ability to explore your emotions and get real with what they're saying to you, what they mean for you, and reveal what's real. It's like these kind of commitments to self are kind of woven into being able to show up in these kinds of relationships. Healing partnership, whether that's like, Jared and I would say, still have a healing partnership
Mm.
where, you know, I I would say my orientation to Jared's growth and my own growth is more my focus than, you know, are Jared and I creating a marriage or a specific picture of some future dynamic, down the road. I Whatever we're creating will reveal itself as we create it. My experience, or what I'm like imagining for he and I, is like my emphasis is on my own growth. I focus on my own growth. I, I'm holding space for Jared's growth, and his focus is on his. And we also have a lot of um like loyalty and attention that we give to each other and like to each other's inner child.
Mm.
Like as in like I have a relationship with Jared's inner child. It's like I have he's my lover and I have a relationship with that side of him too, but his inner child is also in relationship with me. And so when sometimes the way he behaves causes me to not see him as particularly sexy, it's okay, because that's only one aspect or facet of our relationship. That being in relationship with his inner child is what I'm enrolled for. And so, it's like sometimes the inner child is not sexy. And it's like by definition is unsexy. And it's okay to have those moments where we're relating in an unsexy way, where we're relating in like a very cuddly way, where we're relating in a very like I see a certain maybe tantrum unfolding, like that's maybe this side of you needs some attention, and I'm gonna give this attention, and then we're gonna have a conversation with the adult version of you about it later, and let's like actually help this part of you and not judge it and shame it for existing, but giving it a voice and a space to like I want my inner child to be given a seat at the table. I want it to be equally important and considered, so why would I not do that for him?
Mm. Yes, this is such a big piece because the way we were trained to do relationship, if we can even say that, because they just give us a map. It's like, okay, just meet somebody, date, and then get married, then have family, and you know merge in one, live together, and do these tasks, together, and play these roles, but nobody talks about really unlocking different parts of ourselves. And there is like a separate branch, right, in psychology. There is a approach like working with different parts of yourself that sometimes can be in conflict, and it's very important to give stage and to allow these different parts of yourself to voice their truth, because otherwise the part that is always oppressed or hidden and never has voice, and then this is where resentment starts to build up. So there is many people who are, doing lots of inner work and interested in psychology and grow these days and do healing. We explore this modality of like exploring different parts of ourselves. And it's beautiful that you actually integrate it in your relationship with Jared, and you both are aware that which part is talking at this moment. Obviously, with his inner child is completely different than the sexual and romantic part, right? And you allow that to be, and you actually protect and create container for that to interact in that space and honor the boundaries within the child. And understanding in a child is not mature, right? There is something that is just so energetic, but it might be not articulated completely aware, right? So it's holding space for each other as in a child is definitely another level of mastery in the relationship, because most people just like demand, like, like get offended, like what is going on, what is real right now, what part of you is online and wants to talk and hold space, right, and meet and hear. So this is so beautiful that actually I didn't have any conversations with anybody about this part. Oh,
Mm.
thank you for sharing that. I know we can talk forever. Maybe we can create some series that we can, create something together, because we've been talking how much we want to share with the world and how much we already created as, a group, a creative group relationship even. So I would like to shift a little bit more to, your experience as an apprentice in our School of Tantra, Ascension of Intimacy School of Tantra, and how did it help you to shape your professional approach and seeing yourself as a tantrika and your specific niche that you're working with. I know you're so good with embodiment practices, and you're so connected with your body, and your body is connected to your voice. So you, besides that, you can, really work with subtle energy through your body and connect with other people's body this way and teach them and guide them and hold them, right, make them feel safe in your space with somatic body work, and movement and dance. You also excellent articulating, like translating the body language into like verbal explanation. So this is like your definitely biggest, like one of the biggest gifts. You have had so many. So I've been watching you working with people and facilitating at our retreats, right? We've been already doing that, exploring that in apprenticeship. And I just would like to hear about your experience, and also that will be part of your offering, right? Like what you offer to the world, what is available, like how people can learn from you, how people can experience you um, in this space, in this professional space. And then how that you're weaving several modalities right there, right? Tantra and dance, specific kind of dance that you've learned. And you and Jared do like a time massage together for couples. You did excellent work at the retreat and authentic relating. So tell me a little bit more how this experience and apprenticeship like really help you to create an offer like that. You know, like people will come and it's like, okay, she's been doing this for 20 years because you're so good. You're just genius.
Thank you, Lana. I guess I would say for me, one of the biggest gifts from the apprenticeship program has been the hands-on time in the retreats, where we've been able to do the exploration together and get body to body, facilitation, practice. And so that's been a huge value for me, has been, you know, um, as a photographer, I remember the stage that I had to go through from I have an idea of what I want to do to, okay, let me just experiment with people and like invite people and get 30 women into the studio and explore and experiment. And for me to get to that stage of saying, okay, I'm ready to have people and explore, and I'm able, confident, comfortable to lead you through a journey, I really needed to start with, the container that you had designed with the apprenticeship group. Felt like such a really safe, contained group of people. And then the experiential nature of the retreats that you hold as well really just puts us all into that dropped in space where we can all be really vulnerable and open with each other and explore and like create and experiment in terms of, it's like a lot of what my work is, it's interesting you say to verbalize the body mechanics. I started as a photographer where to pose people, I simply mirrored and verbalized, how to like directed them through their body. And as a dancer, now it's like I can do all of that body to body, and it's a little bit more clear and easy to integrate when you can feel, my spine articulating in a particular way against your sternum. It helps you realize, oh, I have all of this, mobility in my spine I'm not accessing, right? Versus if I just try to direct you verbally from across the room, how much can I communicate? So the practice and weaving of both of those things is a dance that's both verbally led, especially when we first start dancing and we're not necessarily comfortable having our body connecting with another body. That safety of being able to be directed just verbally. And also, like, a lot of what my work isn't, in an active dance. It's it's sort of like I can look at your body and I can tell where you're out of alignment from the training that I've done. And so the training that I have too to kind of direct somebody into their body,
Mm.
paying attention to where it's like imagining a pulley system here and, this getting anchored this way. And then you send energy down to your butt and then now to your feet. And then now it makes you 5 inches taller, to play with people's bodies in this way has been a really delicious exploration. And to have the container where people are allowing the exploration to be a process, allowing it to just be, giving me a space and a chance to just really actually see myself in my mastery. That I feel I have developed it over years and different mediums are kind of all coming together and coalescing. And it's been really important doing the apprenticeship program for me to be able to articulate what it is that I do because I needed the space to play, to do what I do in settings where people are going into that tantric activated, dropped in state and allowing themselves to connect with their body and to let the rider, we might say, like if you're a horse who's being ridden by a rider and you've got your mind as your rider and your horse is your animal body, so much of us identify as the rider.
Mhm.
And for myself, I used to identify as the rider. I didn't identify as the horse ever. I was like identifying as trying to control this unruly horse as if it was some other being. And so for me, that's my work now is to help people learn how to identify as the horse and the
Wow.
animal of
Animal.
their body. Yeah. And to connect with that wildness from a new paradigm that's not from the perspective of trying to control it and trying to boss it and direct it and all, turn it into a slave.
Mm. So powerful. That's what most people do, right? They think they need to control the wild animal and to control like also sexuality is like controlling sexuality, putting like taming it, like putting it in the cage and thinking it's gonna be like thriving. It's like, no. Yet it can be healthy and wild, and it can be like in harmonious, safe relationship with the rider, right? With the mind, right? And I
Mm.
watched you working with people at the retreat, in the couples retreat, and I was just so fascinated how you can facilitate somebody's process who like there are some people who like had a really dense conditioning and like really not connected to their bodies at all, and like how you could take them and within one practice like whatever 40 minutes like or half an hour you take them to the place where you completely open up, and like it also open up this avalanche of emotional material that is held in the body, right? In Tantra we see physical body and energetic body as one, and all these emotions are being stored there, no access to them, and like this kind of this facade that was like calm and like cool and not kind of numb, right? And suddenly like you open up and I'm just thinking, and how to create safety for that, because it can be overwhelming for people, right? And I've been watching you doing that, like and holding space and guiding and creating safety and helping them integrate. That was like fascinating mastery that you just organically have, and all the years of experience that all these modalities you integrated into your work.
Mm. Well, I mean, remember like the vision of a 30-year-old woman starting to ride horses for the first time, and the horse starts to run, and it's scary as hell.
Mm.
And what happens to my body in that moment is not that different from a person who's experiencing the flood of their emotions for the first time, like that they're unblocking these held emotions in their system. It's similar. It's an avalanche of intensity. It's your fight or flight response kicks in. I mean, your whole system is in rejection of being in this feeling if you're afraid of being seen in your emotions. So, I mean, the training is the same.
Mm.
What was my training in that moment? My dominatrix, like she was this like 20-year-old college student who was teaching me how to ride my horse, is teaching me to slow down my breaths, to make myself heavy, to send my energy down my back, like trickle down your back so that your butt is heavy, then send it down to your heels and your heels are heavy.
Mm.
That's the literal training that I'm doing inside my body when I'm getting overwhelmed in any emotional situation with another person, whether I'm facilitating them or whether, as a facilitator, and frankly, we always are, when you're interacting with another person, you're absorbing each other's energy. So if the other person is having a flood of emotions, from having all of this movement and unsticking the tension that they've been holding emotions with their whole life, these muscle patterns of holding can release a lot of emotionality. Well, if they are feeling their emotions, I'm feeling their emotions. I'm feeling mine that are similar. I'm feeling the exact same. They're mirroring, like the way the mirror neurons work is whatever you're putting in the field, I feel it too. I feel my flavor of it. It's coming from inside my body, so it's mine that I'm feeling. So anything within me that mirrors that emotion in you, I'll feel. So if I'm not comfortable with how I feel, how you feel with these big feelings as a facilitator, I can't hold space for you.
Mm.
So, I mean, all I'm doing as a facilitator or as, in myself, in my own practice, whenever these emotions flood me, is the same thing I did with riding a horse.
Mm.
I'm trickling the energy down my spine. I'm making myself heavy in my butt and in my heels.
Mhm.
And I'm like literally maybe flexing my butt cheeks, like to ground myself downward to create heaviness in my body. I slow my breaths and I may even make the sound. Oh,
Mhm.
like, so I can do that in a subtle way if I'm in a situation where I'm just interacting with somebody at a networking event and I'm overwhelmed with my emotions. I can just I can just kind of clench my butt cheeks and like bring myself into my body and take some deep, slower, quieter breaths and feel myself regaining my center. And so that's the training, the first training I would give to somebody. It's like how to come back to your own center, how
Mhm.
to return to that safety. And it's like when the horse starts going too fast, it's scary because you don't know how fast it can go, and you don't know, you haven't learned like all of the different ways that you might be able to relate and gain control and be in safety and be okay. So maybe we have to develop a lifetime of skills on top of this. But this is the first skill you have to do, because until you have gotten yourself, your own animal back under control, you can do nothing. There is no control. There is no, I mean, there's maybe suppression and holding. That's what you've been doing. That's the clench pattern that we're releasing and working towards letting go of. And so it's like training like the how to find being okay in the intensity of whatever emotions are released. And the way that you find being okay in it is just by learning that you can just return back to center, that it will be temporary, and that all you have to do is breathe yourself through it. And once you've breathed through it for maybe 90 seconds, it's over.
Mm.
And maybe you need more than 90 seconds. Maybe you have a lot of years of holding that you have to release, and maybe you need to purge, and maybe there's a lot of intensity that you want to be able to allow. And, as long as you realize, like, oh, I do have the power, I can come back to my center, then you can start letting the wild list be bigger and more intense, the more trust you develop with it over time.
Mm. So much expansion, like, right, in terms of like the capacity to ride big waves, the capacity to hold big energy, and it's also capacity to deal with intensity of life, which is the most intense experience that we have, right? And Tantra is so much about intensity and like being able to play the edge and know your boundary at the moment where like this is as far as I can go, and it's like I can hold it, and then keep growing and expanding that capacity, right? And one of the definitions of Tantra is like liberation through expansion, right? So I love what you sharing and how you're guiding people and your clients into this mastery and into this ownership and confidence of their own energetics and their own environment, and really understanding also like not just energetics of it and how it feels, so they also can articulate, and there's science behind it, right? So there's so much of wholeness in your approach.
Mm.
So would like to hear, like we're wrapping up our amazing conversation. I would like to make more for sure because I have so much to talk to you about and like unlock, right? But for this conversation, I would like to hear more about your offer, how people can find you, right? What would be the first like intro mm, uh, container for people to work with you?
Mm. Okay, so my first intro container is a beautiful sampler of 5 sessions. And so for 1 hour each, we go into a journey exploring your body. And we start with the groundedness, practices and the training for finding that anchor and that safety of within the intensity. Safety training is where we start. And we expand gradually, if you go through the chakra system and come up to the voice, and we finish with some big expression, with vocalizing, with movement, with connecting to how your body is ready to release and express itself, whether that's with dance or with singing or with speaking, whether that is to finalize our session with a photo shoot or a video session. Our intention is to step into a game of expression and exploring intensity and creating first draft safety mode of the being for going into its maximum expression and creativity and flow. And we do all of this exploration through the body. So all of this is through somatic explorations, different exercises that are connecting you to your spine, through all of the different snakes of the body, to the sensual energy, to training you how to move your energy from the sensual up into the creative, using your heart connection as an anchor point that is this bridge between the body and the mind. And so it's an exploration of reconnecting and reactivating the body for people whose mind is already really, really strong and really potent and powerful and are ready to bring the fullness of their channel into open access so that they're tapping into their body wisdom and body truth and
Mm.
aliveness and being able to follow and lead from within their truth moment by moment, maintaining this um, staying current with oneself and with, the universe as you're going through this hero's journey. It's that staying in connection to what is my present moment by moment truth. And first we have to access it and tap into it and unlock it and get it all, like this channel turned on and connected.
Mm.
And we play from there.
Mm.
So 5 sessions to play and activate all of the different channels, and from the roots up to the voice, we activate the body.
Mm. Fascinating, fascinating. Yes, I must say, even like half an hour with London, in person, it can be completely game changing and life changing and unlock something that, you will never want to go back to the old, like, small cage that where many people live because they
Mm,
don't know what is available. So, yes, I highly recommend to explore these sessions, London, and you'll see for yourself how powerful they are. Thank you so much, London, for this conversation. I'm looking forward for more. I know we want to collaborate and create more in the world and keep growing our community, tantric community, and keep weaving the gifts of each person, of each unique soul that comes here for this journey of embodiment. So thank you so much for this time. It was deeply enjoyable and insightful.
I love you so much, Lana. Thank you for having me, and I can't wait to come back.
Yeah, I love you.
Well, we went